Hello, 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 my beautiful rejects. How are you today? I hope you're feeling rejected in the most beautiful, positive way possible. And it's got you up a little more fire under your ass and you're ready to tackle this thing called life. Today, I have someone who has absolutely figured out how to tackle this thing called life. And she is what I call my bestest friend, Snejana. I call her Snej.
Hi, bestie.
Hi. How's it over there in Nashville?
Hot and beautiful and full of summer showers. It's pretty magical out here right now.
Oh, that sounds
Everything
delicious.
is green. I'm sitting on the front porch every now and then.
Oh,
Delicious.
that sounds scrumptious.
It sure is.
Speaking of, you are in your new home that you just purchased. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
Excited, overwhelmed. This is a big, big new step.
Adulting at its finest.
100%.
Last year, you got married in
I did.
Italy
I did.
to your
Also, a big
husband.
step. My
Another huge
husband,
step in your life. Your husband, who I love, Mr. Mateus. Matt
Mateusz
Mateus. The
Mert.
Dutch. Mert. That was amazing. It was not this has to do with rejection. It will get there. That's why I'm starting with this. But it was probably one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. And then I was 40, I think, 40 years of being alive.
Thank you.
It was magical. It was whimsical. It was heartfelt. It was true. It was deep, but it was light. It was exquisite. Thank you so much for having
Um,
me there.
I'm so glad that you experienced it that way. That was our intention to create that kind of experience for the friends and family that were there, and we felt it that way. And so it's amazing to see that it landed that way with everybody else who was there.
You know, your life to being where you are right now is so reflective in the sense that every single person there, small of it, how many people were there?
It was 40.
Every for every single person, all 40 of us.
Mm-hmm.
It was so easy to get along. It
Yeah.
was such a healthy, loving environment. And I believe that your environment and your friends and your tribe and your family that you choose or you don't choose, they really are reflections of who we are and where we're vibrating in life and our perspective. I mean, basic. If you're vibrating in a certain place and you have a higher perspective, you can have a conversation with somebody and then you become, oh, I like you. It's a little easier at our age as opposed to our 20s. No offense to the friends we had in our 20s, we're just different people, but you don't notice that so quickly right off the bat,
Right, right,
right?
right.
Um, and
And
you're,
I love the people that we were friends with in our 20s because they're probably totally different people now too. I don't know. Who I was in my 20s is not at all who I am today, and I suspect that's the case for most people. So the people that I knew and maybe parted ways with, that we parted ways with, that we knew in our teens, in our 20s, early 30s, who may not be in our lives anymore, if we came back together with them, it may be magic. Who knows? They're so different. We're so different. But by design, the 40 people that were at our wedding were the 40 people that we have consciously pulled closer and closer into our lives. And there was nothing more beautiful and more exciting than putting them all in a room, because throughout life, you acquire these special people that you pull in closer and closer and you hold tight. And they're from different spheres. And like, I always think, oh my God, I wish this person could meet this person because they would love each other and they would vibe and they would have so many different things to talk about. So being able to put them all in one room and seeing the beautiful magic that happens was by far my most favorite thing about the wedding weekend, the wedding week, the wedding trip, the whole experience, is seeing those friendships that you dreamed about, that you knew would materialize, just magically come together, and you get to just sit back and gloat and enjoy. Like, these are all my people and they all love
you
each other.
you had that glow, you had that essence the whole time. Like I would catch you just observing and you were just so enthusiastic about it. You were just you I would look at you, watch like different people growing, like, and you'd just feel like that eye glow that you get in that little like kid feeling, that like it was just so apparent. And those people in our 20s helped make us who we are today. Whether today we would be close again or not, they were very instrumental in being the human beings that we are today. So I have nothing but love and admiration and respect for 99% of them.
There's that special 1%. You know who you are. You
Yeah,
know who you are.
I have to probably think about who that is, but
I
like I
know.
just know there's at least 1%, right? Like
Seriously. Yeah.
I'm not
Yep.
going to be
Yep.
that optimistic, like 100% of them. I'm sure there's 1% that I just never need to see again.
You're
Um,
so right. You're so
and I'm
right.
sure that's the same for them as well. Don't even know who that is. Just being realistic instead of so optimistic for once
You
in my
know, but
life.
even that 1% that we're like joking about, nothing but gratitude for them because there's a special lesson inside them as well.
Absolutely. And yeah, hopefully we kind of help them find that lesson, by our exchange of energies as in that moment in time as well. Who knows?
I like to think so. Hopeful.
Yeah, same. Well, I
Even
started off
even
with
if
it. Go
even if
ahead.
it's even if it's a thing that rubbed them the wrong way about me that helped find that lesson, I'm cool with that. I have become at peace with that too. Like the thing that irritated you the most about me, if that helped you at least realize what you don't like, cool, I'll take it.
I love that. I love that. And I was even thinking, because of me being the Scorpio, I was like, yeah, even if there was that thing that I knew I was doing wrong when I look back more consciously at it and being like, yeah, you could have been a better person, same thing. I like that duality of it's both sides of the coin. You just never know what it is, right?
100%.
Until you really think about it. Maybe a little too much sometimes. But I started there because look, that was magic. It was bliss. It was everything. Like you said, the experience is what I look forward to having once my husband and I finally meet each other and I have a wedding because I love the people that I have around me so much. They are such
Mm.
beautiful, magnificent human beings, all who have really decided to face rejection straight in the face and be like, I got you. I have your number. I can handle you and it's going to make me better. I mean, we all have these conversations. We all have literally grown together. Without each other, we probably wouldn't be who we are today. So I look forward to having that same thing and just like beaming to seeing like all the connections that haven't been made yet being made
Mhm.
in that special magical moment as well. And also just having that sexy man being like, I love you for life. And I'm like, I love you for life. And what? And
Can't
what?
wait. I cannot wait.
And
Can't
like,
wait to
wherever he
meet
is.
him. Can't wait to be there. Can't wait for all the tears and the fireworks. It's going to be amazing. It's going to
It's
be
going to
so
be fun. It's a
beautiful.
long time coming for me. So I think all of us will be really, I feel like we're all going to feel like we just found a boyfriend when I say my Spencer Daniel.
I love it. I'm gonna celebrate secondhand through you. It's gonna be amazing and beautiful, and you deserve it. All of it. All of the good things coming your way are gonna find you in the perfect time.
Thank you so much. And
Mhm.
I can receive that because I have been optimistic and I have shifted my perspective of what rejection is in my life. And it's a fuel. We are turning rejection upside down here. I am a reject. You can get a hat that's going to say reject, a t shirt that says reject, and I wear it proudly because if not for that, I wouldn't be this person that I am today. And I'm really happy with who I am. I think I've come a really long way in this lifetime. And through that process to even get to that place of that wedding I'm speaking of having one day,
Mhm.
you had yours last year and it wasn't all rainbows and fairy tales and roses to get there. For people that don't know, Snejana was a widow. She lost her husband at a young age, Mark Daly, who is an amazing person. If I cry, it happens. Can't help it. I love him so much. And how did you bounce back from the death of your husband to being
Ooh.
in this space that you are today?
Girl, it was a long road. It was a journey, a
How long?
15-year journey. 15 years
Mm,
ago. 15 years ago was when he passed away. And you have been on this long road with me all 15 years. And so you've gotten a chance to see the ups and downs. It's been tough at times. It's been uplifting and beautiful at times. It's been a slap in the face at times. How did I bounce back? I mean, I think immediately after it happened, I didn't bounce back, and I didn't have the strength to force myself to bounce back. I know that some people have that knee-jerk reaction, and when they get hit, they pop right back up and they're like, oh, no, 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 I don't accept this. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to charge. I'm going to face it head on. That wasn't my reaction. My reaction was I shut down. I absolutely shut down. And I actually ended up, and in hindsight, when I tell some of these stories, they sound crazy. Like they sound even crazy to me, but it felt absolutely normal at the time. I ended up moving in with his family. So the day that I found out that he passed away, I was actually at his mother and father's house, his childhood home. And then I never left. I didn't, maybe I went home and packed up some basic things and I moved in with them. And their 3 other children also moved in. One came home from college and decided to drop a semester. That was my brother, Eric. Nicole, the youngest sister, was in high school, so she was already in the house. Christine also moved into the other bedroom. So we all kind of huddled under one roof and just gave each other that little cocoon, the little protection that we needed to just be emotional, be irate when we needed to, be slow when we needed to. And honestly, I spent a lot of time just going inward, and I slept a lot. I didn't eat very much for the first 2 weeks, I think. And then there was one day I remember I was brushing my teeth and I was looking at myself in the mirror and I caught a glimpse of my bones. And I was like, okay, I need to nourish myself. I need to survive, even though I don't feel like I want to live right now. For the people around me, I need to take care of this. And so there are little moments that kind of pushed me out of it. But I'd say I spent probably 3 to 6 months on pause, life on pause, everything on pause. I had my hair in a messy bun and wore my robe around the house until 3 p.m. But I gave myself license to, I didn't know what else to do. And luckily I had friends and family members. I mean, you were over at the house many, many times and saw me an absolute mess, but we sat on the couch and we chit chatted. And every once in a while, we ate some snacks and did things that felt relatively normal. But in the beginning, I couldn't bounce back, and I took it slow. And then as I started to come out of that, what happened is I had many moments of realization that I am still alive, and I owe it to him. I owe it to myself. I owe it to the fact that I am still alive to just say, fuck it, and get up and do whatever it is that I was compelled to do. And at that time, I had this very extreme drive to live big. And at that time, what it meant to me to live big is I wanted to go abroad. I wanted to join the Peace Corps. I wanted to go to Afghanistan and teach women vocational skills and give them tools to have a better life. And so I started doing some research, and I started trying to find organizations that would send me to the most obscure places in the world where no one else wanted to go, because I just wanted to live, and I wanted to live without fear. It's not that I didn't care whether I lived or died. I just didn't want to be ruled by that fear and stopped from living a bigger life. So I went to a couple Peace Corps meetings and explored that. And I didn't feel like emotionally I was ready to commit 2 years of my life to solitude, because part of the Peace Corps is you agree to be sent to wherever they want to send you. And you could be with 3, 10, 12, or 0 other people. And so in my mind, I was envisioning myself in a tent in Malawi by myself in this emotional state. I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Yeah.
So, I started trying to find other ways to give back. Unfortunately, at that time, I couldn't find any organizations that would send me to the Middle East. It was just too much of a liability. They weren't sending anyone, really. And so I kind of scaled back and started trying to find local things that I could do. But at that time, that was my way of bouncing back, is just getting up and starting to move and starting to think about what would make me feel like my life has purpose, because I still have life and I have to now live for 2 people. That's how I felt.
Well, especially because Mark was such a man who lived in purpose. The reason he even joined the military
Mm-hmm.
was for a purpose. He felt like
Mm-hmm.
he knew what he was going to do would be some instrumental change whether it was one person or a million people, that's what he did it for. And it's this he in such a selfless servitude act,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This we talk people, you might be thinking like, well, how does that deal with rejection? Because sometimes it's not rejection from a person or a family. Sometimes the universe rejects you. I mean, it really is. Sometimes it's just like,
Yeah,
and this is not going to be the way you thought it was going to be.
yeah.
When someone dies, it's
Oh, and fairy tale life that you had planned for yourself 20, 50 years from now, the timeline that you drew neatly where you'd have kid 1 and kid 2 and purchase home. The universe went, nah,
no,
mm-mm,
no,
no, not gonna happen that way.
yeah, yeah, and just like people, I don't think the universe is intentionally. Well, maybe the universe actually is a little more intentional in it, but it's about the perspective of the way you receive that rejection. Questione, though, going back a little bit, why did you say it was crazy that you guys all moved together? In what sense? I mean, as I listened to that, I mean, I remember the night happened when I knew something was really wrong, and I drove to their house, and you ran out saying he's gone. Like that was insane.
Mhm,
The first time that I had to deal with death, that was to somebody that was so close to me, besides like my grandpa passing,
mhm.
but like my best friend having to deal with this, and who I
No, and
envisioned the same exact beautiful life. I had a whole different vision for you as well, and then this
mhm, mhm.
this happens. All of you being together. I mean, I don't know what you meant by that, so I'll let you touch on it. But for me, when I listened, I'm like, what an appropriate thing to do, because he was so important, and he was the glue in that family.
Mhm, mhm,
So like, what
mhm.
a better thing to do. And I feel like I can hear his voice saying that's exactly what I needed them and wanted them to do, because I saw them, I knew them. That would be the best outcome for everybody, to be able to handle
Mhm.
this rejection the universe gave multiple people that loved me.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense to you because you knew him and you knew how close we all were as a result of him being the glue and him also being very clear thinking, clear in his communication, and even saying to us explicitly, like he was very realistic. He knew that there was a possibility that he wasn't coming back. So he said to each one of us privately, because he had the wherewithal to sit down with us and say privately, if the worst happens, if I lose my life, I expect you guys to come together and become closer and make sure that my life doesn't become the reason that you fall apart or that the family falls apart or that there's any conflict. I want you to be closer and support one another. And we took that very seriously. But I think there's oftentimes a story that you hear or a narrative where you've got your in-laws and people don't like their in-laws and you're the daughter-in-law, and what do you mean you just moved into your in-laws house and it felt natural and normal? What do you mean you shared a bedroom with your brother and sister-in-law and you guys were in your 20s? It's like, but that's the type of family that I was lucky enough to be adopted into, not to just marry into in some token way. And they say, okay, well, my son loves you, so I accept you. They accepted me as one of their own long before we got married, long before Mark died. And I felt it. And I think that that is a unique story. And I do think that his death brought us closer together and we took his words and the responsibility he put on us seriously because there was no conflict. I think you hear a lot of horror stories, and we were so lucky to avoid all of them, where there's conflict about belongings and where should the person be buried and how are we going to handle the logistics of the funeral. I don't, whatever.
All
we
of it.
had
Yeah.
we had none of that. We instantly came together and we held each other up. And then the ring around us, we had like the several family members, and the ring around us were, extended family and friends and people who knew and loved Mark. And then the ring, one ring further out was our community, which you saw, which was amazing and beautiful, for all the weird experiences I've had in Irvine. Irvine redeemed itself royally when Mark passed away because everyone rallied around us as if it was their own brother, their own child, their own husband who had passed away. And we felt that support. And we are so, so lucky because we know that that's not the experience for everyone.
Oh my God. It's just so impossible not to. First of all, the good ones always go early. They're
Mhm.
always so
They burn
intentional.
bright. They burn
They
bright.
they burn extremely bright. It's like every intention that he had, he still was able to make sure happened, even when he wasn't in this physical world. I mean, what power,
Oh.
what beauty, what a human to be able to be a human and impact the world around you that deeply. Incredible, you know?
Yeah, I mean, still every day, the intention that he put on my heart is what fuels me, what makes me me.
Hmm.
And, one thing that I was thinking about as you were talking about earlier is the rejection from the universe. Like there are some people that feel anger toward the person who passed away, and I fully understand that. I can see how and why that happens. That wasn't the case for me. I felt nothing but love and respect for his intentions, and like you said, his humble servitude and why he served and potentially risked his life. I mean, he knew he was risking his life. So, what's really difficult when the rejection comes from something as nebulous as the universe is you don't have a specific thing to get angry at, to channel your frustration and to say, fuck you, person who fired me or who screwed me over or who didn't want to date me. Like I'm just going to get angry and use that as motivation to deal with it, address it, and move through it. But when the universe slaps you upside the face, where do I direct my anger
Yeah.
and my sadness and my frustration? You just kind of have to sit in it.
And it's a
And
broken heart.
and you find yourself asking the stupid question that's never going to have an answer. Why me? Why God, universe, whatever you want to call it? Why? Why me?
So
And
true.
that
You
that
never do get those answers most of the
that
time.
that specific answer, the why, will never come. But I've done a lot of processing around understanding how the universe, everything that happens within this universe is for you. And this has been such a long, difficult journey to be able to get to this point. And the number one example that I use to try to condense this journey and explain it to someone is I did a leadership course. And as part of that course, they had you do an exercise, which was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. You had to go home at the end of the day and you had to think about the worst thing that has ever happened to you. Okay, very clear for me, right? Super easy. And then you had to come back the next morning and in front of a group of 100 people, you had to say, the worst thing that's ever happened to me, XYZ. But instead of saying the worst thing that's ever happened to me, you had to say the best thing that's ever happened to me, insert worst thing.
Love it.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. It was so difficult. Like I had to force the words out of me because I just couldn't say the best thing that has ever happened to me is the person that I loved most died. What do you mean? And so you have to deconstruct and break down, what does that mean? The best thing that's ever happened to me. Well, what that means is it is what made you who you are today. It is a fundamental part. It has become a part of your being, a part of your heart, a part of your DNA, a part of your motivation. It is now so much a part of the reason that you do everything you do that you don't even notice it anymore. It is you. And without it, I would not have lived the life that I have lived. Without it, I would not have pushed myself personally, professionally, to live big, to crack myself open, to live with an open heart, to know that if the worst thing happens again and again and again, guess what? I'm going to have support and I'm going to bounce back and I'm going to find the strength. And that's the gift that comes along with the worst, best thing that's ever happened to me.
I love that. It is not an easy concept to grasp, let alone
Whew.
digest,
Still
especially
today, I
in
struggle.
especially in the thick of it, and in the mud. Even today, when there is no mud and you've cleaned yourself off, and you're not in
Mm.
that space in that time back then. Um, and I think that's healthy. I think it's healthy to still have that little bit of part of you, because I think that's the part of us that fuels us to be courageous enough to just know, like, then we can handle anything. We don't need
Mm.
that answer. Some things just aren't meant to be answered outside of the fact of our own understanding that we can still move forward. We can use
Mhm.
it as fuel. We can still get past it. Not
Mhm.
everybody has that. Some people would still be living with their parents, and the parents would still be in there, and the daughter would, and they would just live in this succubus of, mourning.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
if not possible with you guys, because Mark would never allowed that, right? Like it
No,
was just always on
no.
purpose.
No, he would
Just
come back and haunt us. He'd be like,
literally
"Mm-mm,
the ghost, and
no."
just like, hey,
I already told you this is not happening. Yeah, we were lucky that we had him and all of his wisdom and guidance, and still have it. The little voice inside your head. I hear it. I feel him every day, and his guidance. We were lucky that we had friends and family to discuss it with. As I'm reflecting on that rejection, what did it teach me? It first and foremost taught me to be resilient, to, even if I'm afraid, I have a reference point to go back to and say, okay, well, what's the worst that can happen? It's not going to be worse than that.
yeah,
So fuck it. Let's go. Right. Because
yeah,
it may suck. Right. Because if something bad happens again, it still sucks. But I know that I'm going to be okay.
yeah. Whether that's a day, a month, whatever that is, that time
Right.
that
Right.
has involvement in the healing process, you will be able to move past
Woo.
it. You will be okay
Yep.
eventually. And it's that perspective that is so important, because I see so many people that aren't capable of actually really having that perspective because it's too scary. It's too scary to get rejected again by life or a person or love or just anything, because it was so debilitating. It
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
paralyzed them from being able to move again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's why we're doing this. That's why we're having this conversation. That's why it was so important for me to have this conversation with you, because the goal of rejection and reflection is for us to understand it in every kind of circumstance possible. And this, with a loved one being lost, I'm sure there are so many humans out there that would really benefit from hearing you talk about this, and not just you talk about it from 15 years ago, but then see where you are 15 years later, which is what I started with. Like, if you can push back past the fears, if you can believe in more, if you can get people around you that support you, and you don't, seclude yourself and live this singular lonely life because you're afraid of living, look what can happen.
Mm-hmm.
You can be
Mm-hmm.
buying your first home with the now love of your life, thank God, who we all love, in Nashville, and getting ready to start a family, and just all the beautiful things that are, there's limitless potential and possibility out there.
There's limitless potential and possibility, and just to go back a little bit, just a micro thing, there's also limitless love. This is my own personal belief based on my lived experience. There is not one love of your life. If I believed that, there's no way I would have been able to get out of bed and carry on. And
Hmm.
luckily, the universe provided and gave me a real tangible example when Matt came into my life. So it gets confusing because there's Mark. Mark passed away. Matt is my current
Eminem.
husband, Mark and Matt, and both their initials are MD. I don't know, little divine signs. Call me
I
crazy.
mean, no, it sounds like signs for real. Like, that's, I would be like, oh, okay, thanks, Mark, I'm listening.
It certainly
Like,
it certainly wasn't what I was looking for, but when I
totally.
saw it, I was like, "Oh wow, okay, this is interesting." Anyway, but there is an abundance of love and loves if you open yourself up to it and know that in time, at the right time, that love will enter, and your job is to stay open. And whenever you feel yourself closing, crack yourself open. And like you're saying, there are some people who find it difficult to crack themselves open. I am encouraged and inspired by the people that we have all around us that find different ways, maybe ways that don't work for me, but that work for them. Like even down to the cold plunging trend now, right? Like everyone is cold plunging. And although it's Not for me, because I can sit in that cold water for 3 days. Like I have already proven to myself that I can endure physically, mentally, emotionally. So that exercise doesn't crack me open a little bit more. But I understand that for some people, that's the jolt that they need to say, hey, I'm going to survive. I'm going to be okay. I can do hard things. I can conquer this. And there's so many different modalities out there that people are practicing, that I'm hopeful that even the people who may have, who are still in their parents' home 15 years later, something may come across their life, their computer screen, their phone, that cracks them open a little bit and a little bit more and a little bit more, and that they lean into it and they feel empowered and inspired to keep challenging themselves, to sometimes step into the suck just to prove to yourself that you can.
And if you've been sitting in that suck for 15 years, you've proven to yourself that you can. You've proven to yourself that's, in some really fucked up way, I guess, that's a lot of stubborn strength and like power to be like, I can do this for 15 years. But then that power can also become your weakness, and it
Right.
can, and stop you then from actually living. So if you've done that and you're thinking like, and you're hearing this, know
Mm-hmm.
that, pat yourself on the back, because there's something beautiful about you being that stubborn and that resilient to stay in that space for 15 years. Well, now it's been 15 years, change it
Right.
up a little bit. Open your eyes to what is out there waiting for you. And I hope, if it's been 15 years or a long time and it's just been pulling that arrow back, further, that when you have that courage to take that step, it goes boom, and it just accelerates you so fastly and so quickly, and that you find that love and support faster than ever, and you are filled with joy and happiness again, because you deserve it. You
You
really
deserve
deserve it.
it, and it's available for you. And like you're saying, whether it's 15 years or 6 months, my polling back was, a condensed 6 months. For some people, it might be 15 years, and that's
Right.
okay. Because once you launch,
Yeah,
everything is possible.
absolutely. You just got to be willing to let go of that arrow. I mean, for me personally, it's always love that's been the hardest thing for me to get over rejection of that. That's understandable since of my upbringing and all that good stuff. But like, it's easy for me to just bounce out of anything else. Anything else,
Mhm. Mhm, mhm.
the rejection I faced in my career, all the, everything else on the daily, whatever. It's always that love thing that always takes me a little longer to be able to like snap out of, to move forward.
I still think
But we all have that
that's
thing.
the hardest. Like when we first started talking about rejection, and I started reflecting on the pivotal rejections in my life, they all have to do with relationship, with one form of love or another, whether it's love and friendship, love with a family member, love with a romantic partner. The ones that stick with me the most, that I'm still working through and trying to push through on a daily basis,
Fascinating.
they're all about interpersonal relationships, love, and bids for attention, bids for recognition. See me, pick me. And so, in a way, putting
That's fear of
the
rejection.
putting the Mark example aside, because like I said, there was no subject, there was no person. So that wasn't part of that, right? Like I couldn't say, universe, why didn't you pick me? Right. But before and after Mark passed away, there have been plenty of relational rejections that I'm still working through every single day, by people pleasing, by not putting myself out there, by expecting people to meet me halfway whenever I'm in social situations. If you come and talk to me in any room, I will talk to you for hours. If I have to approach you, it ain't happening. We're not having a conversation. We'll never meet each other. Like, what is that? And you can trace
Yeah.
that back to times in life where I put out bids for attention,
Yeah.
starting all the way with primary caregivers and my dad. Hey, look at me, pay attention to me, acknowledge that I'm special and that I'm worthy of your love and attention, and getting shut down time after time. Then you start to internalize that rejection, and you start to think that, if he's rejecting me and I'm supposed to be his most beloved thing, then that must be right. And so you start to betray yourself. You start to not put yourself out there. You start to put other people first because, I mean, naturally, since day one,
Easier.
my parent has been teaching me that I'm not worthy of being seen, acknowledged, and prioritized. And that is such a hard thing to work through. And it is such a bitch to continue to live. When you look at it from the outside and when you describe it, and when I notice that I'm doing it, I'm like, what are you doing to yourself? This isn't you. This isn't something you were inherently born with. So remove the layers of gunk that's been put on you that makes you believe this. And I mean that I think so much of that has to do with love and romantic partnership and putting yourself out there or how you behave in a partnership.
Even not in romantic. I mean, you just said it's love from a parent, and you actually did that perfectly because that's what I was going to go back to. Is when did you start? Can you remember as a child? Of course, I know, and I know it's the circumstance with your father that you spoke of, and
Uh-huh.
from a very early age, you had to deal with that. I mean, you came over from Bulgaria. How old were you?
I was 6. So I started the first grade here and I only knew one word in English, which was teeth. I don't know why, super random. I just knew the word teeth. How is that going to help me in the first grade? Not at all.
That's hilarious. What,
Yes.
like, even then, to kind of keep backtracking it, because I want to get those little pieces that tell us, like, oh, this is how she is, who she is today.
Mhm.
Like, what was it like being a foreigner in a foreign environment, knowing one word? Do any of those memories, as you in this right now and receive what I'm saying, do they pop off in your mind of thinking that one instant really of rejection or not feeling welcome? Like, that's what rejection is. Led me to this one thing in my life that then I had to overcome to realize it wasn't me. That was a little kid's teasing because of their own thing. Or, what, speaking of the dad, it's like, you take it personally for so long, but you get older, you can't take it personal anymore. And you look back and you're like, he's dealing with the cards that he was given the best that he is capable of dealing with them,
Yeah.
and we're all
Yeah.
capable of different things on different levels.
I mean, I think when it comes to childhood, two primary examples pop up immediately, and I want to make sure that we don't forget one or the other. One is my relationship with my dad, I think, which is the easiest thing to start with, and then two, we'll get back to, is kind of being an immigrant, uh, starting school, even in a diverse community. So we'll get to that, but let's start with dad because I think that is the
Dada.
fundamental dada. I used to call him dada, and I think about that now, and I was like old enough not to like use baby talk, but I think about that now, and I'm like, I didn't have that kind of relationship with him. Like, what was I trying to do? Like, be like super cute and dada, like
Yeah, you
pull
were
him
trying to
in,
get
like
attention. You were doing everything you could in your power just to be seen.
how bizarre, but how
Yeah.
normal for a child, right? So
Of course, especially
my
someone like you who is just
ooh,
literally leads with so much love.
man.
Like the thoughts, not to put thoughts in your head, but I'm going to say it's coming. It's like
Mhm.
to even think like like your dad not loving you for all the great things that you are. I mean, not jumping ahead, but I mean, you are extremely academically accomplished as well, and like you've done so many great things. So let's go back to where you were though. Like you were still able to get past this daddy thing and become someone. So sorry, I jumped a
Yeah,
little bit,
but I
but
mean the academic thing and the being successful thing, again, it's
was
going back to the
yeah,
worst thing that's happened to me is the best thing that's happened to me. One of the worst things that's happened to me is being born into a family where I had a very young father. He was in his early 20s when I was born, and he was not ready to be a dad. I don't think he was ever meant to be a dad. That's just my personal opinion. He didn't have a desire to be a father. It just happened to him, and he kind of went, "Oh shit, I guess I got to do the responsible thing and get married and be in a family that I don't really want to be in because I'm a wild spirit.
he's an artist.
Have He's an artist. He's an abstract artist. I have an artistic soul, and I don't want to betray that by putting that aside and getting a corporate job to like put food on the table and take care of my baby. But, bless him, he tried, he did. He took the responsible path. And my dad was with me living in my household, married to my mother until I was 15 years old. So my dad was in my life technically for a very long time, but I never had a close relationship with him. I had a friendly relationship with him. There was never any abuse or anything like that. Although in a therapy session, a therapist pointed out that neglect is a form of abuse. Now it was like a hard pill to swallow. I was like, oh, okay, like it isn't over. No one is, screaming, hurling insults at me or hitting me or whatever. But neglect is that silent, insidious, creepy form of abuse that we don't acknowledge as abuse, that I did not acknowledge as abuse.
And
Anyway.
acknowledging it is important so you can move past it and not having to put like this weight on it of being like, I was abused and this is why I am the way I am. It's just like, okay, oh wow. I can say that I was abused in a way, and because I can say that, I can come to terms with it. I can move past it. But if
Right.
you ignore that, it's going to forever lay dormant inside of you and hold you back.
Yeah, it was a beautiful aha moment. It was like, oh, wow. Okay. I now have words to use around what I experienced. And so my dad lived very much within himself and in his own world, and was very interested in the things that he was interested in, and in painting. And he had usually had a room in the apartment where he would go and close the door and paint for hours. And I did everything in my power. I stood on my head to make my dad acknowledge me and look at me and go, wow, you're the greatest thing that's ever happened in my life, and you're special, and you're this, you're that. So, like from like physically like dancing around the house to like, I want a mini easel and I want to paint and I want to show my dad how good I am at the things that he's interested in. And I won the art competition at school, and I'm featured in the school play that he never showed up to. None of my school events, whether they were artistic or academic, it didn't matter, because it just wasn't, it wasn't like malicious. He wasn't like, oh, I know her stuff's going on, but fuck that, I'm just gonna do whatever I want. It just didn't even occur to him. He's like, she doesn't need me. She's doing her thing. She's a kid. She's going to school. I'll be over here pursuing my life goals and dreams. And as you said, as you grow older, you have so much compassion for that. In a way, I have admiration for my father. I'm like, wow, you did not betray yourself. You stayed true to your artistic soul, and you pursued your craft, and you pursued your passions. That's an admirable thing, to the detriment of a young child, but to your credit, a child that you never really planned or wanted. So, universe hands you something, and then you get to choose how you deal with it. But how it affected me was I was so hungry for that attention, male attention, because I got lots of attention from my mom. My mom more than overcompensated for my father's lack of attention. So, I
Hi,
felt,
Daniela. We love you.
Hi, Mom. I felt very loved by her, and kind of neutral with my dad. And it's not like I felt like my dad hated me or resented me at that young age. I didn't understand the complexities of, he's an artist, he's young, and he shouldn't have been a dad. I was just like, I don't know why he doesn't, I don't know why he's not paying attention to me. But it taught me how to excel and get attention from literally everyone other than my father. So I could prove to myself and to him, hey, look,
You are worthy.
I'm worthy of attention. You see, everybody else thinks I'm cool. Everybody else loves me and wants to pat me on the head, and I get all the fucking accolades. Don't you feel like an asshole now? It's like, at some point I realized that that's what I was doing. And I'm like, that can't be my motivation. I have to do it for me. I have to do it because I want to. And so I've come to a place in my life now, which is profoundly affecting me professionally, where I have to keep repeating to myself, just because I can doesn't mean I have to. Just because I'm good at something and I can excel and get the accolades doesn't mean that I have to do it. I only have to do it if I want to do it. If I ask myself, does this bring me joy? Does this light me up? Is this how I want to spend my time? If the answer is yes, then go out and get the accolades. But if the answer is no, then stop. Like, who are you doing it for? You're not proving it to your dad. You don't need
Yeah.
to prove it to the rest
He
of the
still to this
world.
day probably is not aware of all the yeah, I mean, because in high school you were like in all honor classes and APs and stuff, right?
I mean,
And
yes,
the
yes.
and
I finished college in 2 years because I had so many credits coming in to undergraduate because I did college classes in high school. I did all the AP classes that I could. I did summer school. I did 2 sessions at different schools just to rack up the credits. I mean, I did everything that I could to excel academically because that was what was valued by my mother, being an immigrant and coming from a place of I left my home country behind to give you opportunities, and now you have the responsibility to make the
to
most of
take
those
them.
opportunities.
Yeah.
I took
That's
that
a
very
lot of
seriously.
responsibility, but thank God you were capable of that because I mean, you graduated from USC in 2 years.
I did, and I wish I wouldn't have rushed. Like in hindsight, I'm like, I wish I would have done a semester abroad. I wish I would have partied more. I wish I would have just taken my time and
Could you have
enjoyed the
though?
college experience.
Could you
But
have?
I
Because
would.
you got married with to Mark. Like, I mean,
Yeah, I got married one semester before I graduated. So hypothetically in the beginning I could have, but yeah, I was also busy being in love. So,
yeah. Because you and Mark were together
studying.
for how long? Since what age?
It was the summer before I graduated high school was when we met, and he was 2 years ahead of me, so he was at community college. And so, yeah, my objective, it was easier for me to graduate early, but the motivation to graduate early was to be with him. So I knew that he was going to graduate, get commissioned in the military, be stationed somewhere, and at that point we were attached to the hip. I'm like, I can't imagine this person going somewhere other than right next to me and me not being able to go with him.
I mean,
Forget
and
that.
just everything you just shared with us too. It's like you finally found that like man that is
Mm.
going to give you that love and attention and everything you've been striving to be so grateful for that purpose and that reason. And then the universe still was like, like,
Psych! You thought
like,
you had it. You thought you had it. You thought it was your fairy tale, and then not so much.
don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's interesting because the correlation between being overachieving just to prove at a young age, I don't know if that's a common thing. I don't want to say that because I can't speak for everybody, but I think it's a common thing with myself and the people that I am surrounded by.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and it's incredible. It's incredible how
I
you
think it's a
pushed yourself so hard.
common thing in life because whether it's your parents or your friends or your teachers, everyone just wants to be seen. Everyone wants to be seen, heard,
What
understood,
about those people that don't? Like
acknowledged.
there are genuine introverts out there. Like they don't want to be seen. They squeam like they're squirmish at the thought of even being like having attention on them, right?
They have different formats of being seen.
Okay.
Connection is the underlying thing. So they may connect with one person over the internet in the darkness of their bedroom and they connect
Right.
about the
Right.
fringe thing that they're both super into, but they crave that. I'd say it's a human condition to crave that kind of
Yeah.
connection. And the connection is the ultimate deep
The modality
motivation.
depends on the human being. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We're all different, but we all need it to thrive. And I've actually seen examples of people who lack that connection in their lives and what a toll that takes. Whether that's
Yeah.
circumstance that creates it or whether that's self-imposed. People that do, retreat and remove themselves from
Being rejected.
meaningful relationships. Yeah.
Yeah.
The possibility of either creating a meaningful relationship or being rejected when you're so afraid of being rejected that you don't even want to take the chance. Years and years and years of that will wear you down. It'll break you. It breaks the human spirit. And I have seen that happen.
Yeah. Over and over and over again. I see that being the reason why people are evil. Like there are just some
Mhm.
mean people that are evil, government, just people, all of it, and it's like, I wonder when that switch happened, when they decided to just be so malicious and malevolent and their own interests took aim and priority over really others. And, you know, being
I
a
think
good person and sharing it.
it degrades them over time. I think. Yeah, I think there's probably like a inciting moment, and then over time it's reinforced and it gets worse and worse and worse. But the irony of it is
Spreading.
the worst detrimental effect is on them. So they could cause a lot of harm and damage and sadness in the world, but ultimately they suffer more than anybody else, which is a perfect full circle for my dad's situation, because he hypothetically inflicted unknowingly a lot of emotional turmoil on me, on my mother, on his friends, on a lot of people who loved him and wanted to connect with him. And I think it was out of fear and uh, fear that leads to kind of self-involvement and retreating into your inner world. And he did that for so many years that he disconnected himself from the rest of the world, and it ended up breaking him. It broke his heart, it broke his mind, and he developed or illuminated a lot of profound mental illness. He was eventually diagnosed with schizophrenia and profound depression, late onset, like the symptoms, the outward symptoms that I saw in him when he was diagnosed was not the person that I grew up with. So there was a change that happened because of all of the weight that was put on his heart from the isolation and from the fear of rejection. And it's really sad. And so you can't help but have understanding and compassion when you see somebody's journey take such a terrible turn. I don't want to see that for anybody. Like I joke like, hey motherfucker, look at me, I'm awesome. But the reality of it is like, I just see him as a person, a beautiful person that had a really difficult life and did the best that he could with the tools that he was given, because a lot of us aren't given very many tools.
Yeah, and for you to be able to say that in the space that you are, that is huge. I've known you for a really long time. And it's really a beautiful, beautiful thing for someone I love so much to see her at such peace. It's awesome. I'm so
Thank
happy
you.
that you're in this space. And you've been here for a while, but just to really be able to articulate it the way that you are and be grounded in the work that you've done to be who you are, I'm just so happy for you. I'm so proud of you for being able to say that like that right now and sharing that with everybody.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, but we'll put a little neat bow on my childhood and then move on. What we were talking about is being an immigrant. It's an interesting one. So being an immigrant in LA is, I think, probably a pretty unique experience, especially in East LA in 1991 when, Silver Lake and Griffith Park were not hipster central. They definitely were not cool. They were just cheap. So that's why all the immigrants lived there. And that's where I went to elementary school. And so I had lots of kids in my classes that were from other places, but it's hard to not feel different and to not feel other when, several times a day you're sequestered into another little pod where you have your little ESL classes, and like visibly you're like different. You're over there with the kids that don't know how to read English. So I think that it motivates you. So I started the first grade knowing one word teeth. I ended the first grade reading at level, like proficiency level, reading, speaking, all of it, because as a child, you're super motivated. You don't want to be left out. I didn't want to be in the classes for special kids. I didn't want to not be able to communicate and make friends. I didn't want to not be able to do my assignments and excel. And I saw how much joy and praise came along with doing well. And so it's
you weren't getting that at home from the dad. So you were like, let me lean into this.
Oh my God. I don't know if you've seen that little viral video where it's a cat with a bell and the cat dings the bell, and every time it dings it gets food. And so it just keeps going ding, 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 ding. Like that's like me with attention and excelling. It's like, I hit the bell. Ooh, okay. I got what I needed. Ding, 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 ding. Like I'm just going to do everything to the best of my ability and everyone is going to love me. Anyway, I'm an obese cat now. I have an overabundance of love and attention.
It's worked for you though. It's worked for you.
Girl, but you know what? At some point it gets really tiring. So now I'm at the phase in my life where I've hit that bell so many times that I hate the sound of the damn bell. I'm like, throw the freaking bell out the window. I'm tired. I don't want to do the song and dance. I want to just be me. And I'm now asking myself, like, what does that actually mean? Who are you? if you take away the performative song and dance, I'm good at everything. Everyone likes me because I'm so friendly, even if I don't want to be. Like, who are you? What do you actually want? So that is the current practice of.
You can't get there without taking life on, without going and getting rejected and finding that clarity, because you
Mhm.
per se weren't rejected in that theology and that practice that you submitted to the world by
Mhm.
being so great and unavoidably lovable to everyone except for your dad, so it's like, do you know what I mean? Like, it
Yeah.
benefited you still in some sense.
Yeah.
So to be able to still look at that, even though it was something that was of a strength possibly, and realize,
Mhm.
oh, this is my weakness possibly, but that doesn't mean that there still isn't strength at the core underlining desire to love and be loved. It's just the way that I might be going
Mhm.
about it that could use
Mhm.
some alterations.
And that's what I love is the realization that two seemingly opposite things can exist at the same time. That
Hmm.
it can be a good thing, an adaptation that serves you, and then it can also be something that's holding you back in a certain way. Like one of my favorite questions that I've been asked while doing the work and going to workshops is, how's that working for you? And just sit for a second. How's that working for you? So for the last 15 years, you've been excelling and hitting the button and getting the attention and da da da. Look at where you are today. Today, not for the last 15 years, but today. How
But
is that
today,
working out for you? And
yeah.
today, I am tired. It is not working for me anymore. So if you
Feel you.
recognize that, then what's next? Right? Like you said, shake it up, try something different, put yourself out there. And I know this about myself now. I require support from time to time. And so I really lean into and leverage tools. Like I'm in coaching right now, and people are always like, what are you in coaching for? Is it like executive coaching? No, I need help when I feel the resistance and when I feel the people pleasing come on. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to say that to that person, or I don't want to send that text that's a load of truth because it makes me feel awkward and they might talk shit, they might not like me and all that. And I need somebody to say, okay, stop right there. How's that working for you? How does that make you feel? And how heavy is that every single day to hold the wants and wishes and happiness of everyone else?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Not working.
Well, yeah, and you know that right now. You know that that's not serving you or working anymore. Uh, yeah, everybody needs that. Like my thing is the intuitive, spiritual life coaching thing. I just tend to see people and see how they're getting in their own way, and then I can talk to you
Mhm.
about it. So that's what I can offer. But if you need something or some type of assistance and guidance, be courageous enough, like Snejana, or to reach out for that help. Or the other people I've had on here that do it as well. I keep telling you guys, if any of these words hit your ears in the right way and they perk up and you can hear that voice, follow your heart there. Go into that space
Mhm.
and try it out. See if they can be a tool to help you guide, be a guidance on this journey, on this path of what you're doing. It's
Yeah,
really, really important.
just as much as rejections have shaped my life and are the reason I am who I am today, so have the people around me who have supported me. Again, like we've talked about 1,000 times, either friends and family, but for the most part, coaches, therapists, spiritual counselors, whoever it is that's that outside counsel. Sometimes it can't be family because sometimes family can't say the thing that needs to be said in order to really land and penetrate what you're going through for you to really hear it. Though, along with the rejections, those tools have changed my life. And I'm convinced I would not be the person I am today without those resources. So I'm a
Absolutely.
huge fan of coaching.
Yeah. Unfortunately, for all of my close friends, I've always been that.
Mm-hmm,
I've
mm-hmm.
always said this shit that they didn't want to hear when they didn't want to hear it. I just, that was, I think, a weakness and a strength. And now I know how to utilize that accordingly a lot better than I did in the past. But that's just kind of innately how I'm built. I remember you always saying that to me. She's like, you said something like, we heard you, we just weren't ready to hear it until like later, and it's just, that's a part of it, especially when there's somebody close. And um it can make it a little tricky, but sometimes you do just need like that person that is a forthright, overly honest friend, because your friend has your best intentions at hand, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
these coaches and stuff, they do as well, but some people need that extra little, um I feel like imaginary attachment as opposed to being like disattached completely from the person,
Mhm, mhm.
to feel a little more comfortable, maybe then move into that space. Everyone needs something different, is all I'm trying to say. I'm
Yeah,
just trying to say
and
as many
sometimes you
things so
can
that so many
develop
people
that.
can hear.
Sometimes you can
Yeah,
develop that with a coach, and for some people, that's why coaching works, is you can develop a slightly deeper relationship where you trust that person, and so you can receive their message. And for some people, coaching doesn't work at all. Like, it's not a one size fits all fix for everybody. Some people read a book and they're ready to hear that message, and it really penetrates, and they change their life. Other people go on a silent retreat or go for an epic hike and stand under a waterfall, and it changes their life. Everybody needs something
she's
different
talking
at
about
a
me.
different.
That's how I do it.
I've also experienced the power of that too. When you're standing in front of that waterfall and that water's like whipping you, you can't help but be spiritually connected to everything that is alive and beautiful around you. So I say do it all.
All of it.
All of it. Take all the tools that are available to us, and we are so lucky. Our generation and younger, like, I feel like the younger you go, the more resources people have available and utilize on a daily basis with ease and comfort, with less resistance. I think that's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. I mean, look, coming from a starving artist who doesn't have much, and throughout many of the years hasn't had much. As much as you guys like to think I'm rich and famous, not yet. On my way, or else I wouldn't be doing this still, right? Um,
What you mean you're gonna
something
be
that
doing this even when you're rich and famous?
that's
This
true.
is this is your calling. You're gonna
This
keep doing it regardless of how much money you have. Okay, let's be
a
real.
million percent. That is undoubted. Yes, you are right. I've been
You're gonna
doing
be
it with, like I
speaking
said,
truth.
I've been doing it at the expense of the people, my loved ones. I mean, so much that when I was a kid, my aunt and my grandma tied me to a tree and like put a muzzle over my mouth because they didn't like me seeing them so clearly.
I
Um,
mean, that is a really violent example of people who are not ready to receive the message, and that has nothing to do with the
Welcome to
messenger.
my family. Welcome to my family. Somehow I've still ended up kind of sane and who I am, which is a miracle in itself. Um, but like when you don't even have resources, one thing that I would do a lot was like I mean, if you have a car and gas, you need that, of course. But for like in this circumstance, like I would put a Joshua tree and I would
Mhm.
just pay to camp there at night. And like, thankfully, I had SUV, so I can just like put the chairs down and like open up the sunroof or take a chair out and start a fire and just like look up at the sky. When you're talking about
Mhm.
just being in tune with spirituality, nature, and realizing, holy shit,
Mhm.
I am like smaller than a grain of sand in all of creation. Like,
Mhm.
it is so humbling. It is so humanizing in a good, positive way. And it really puts into perspective. I'm not taking anything for granted. Like what Snej had to go through with losing her fucking husband is a very serious matter. It's not, it's hard. But like if you can, when you can do stuff like that and realize in some aspect, in some reality somewhere, it's actually pretty small, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And if you can view it in that space, it, it's easier to have the courage to be able to move past it.
Mhm.
So,
We live in
yeah.
a very, very magical, beautiful world if we just look up, look around us, breathe it all in, and just slow down a little bit. That's what I've been trying to do, because I fail to notice those things and be grateful for them because I'm always in a hurry. I'm always busy. I'm always doing. I'm always distracting. We
And
just,
it's good to look in that space and be like, when did this happen? Why did I start doing that? I'm
yeah.
sure that may have served me in that one moment, but I've continued to carry that on for so long. It's not serving me. Like that's essentially you living in the past still. So it's really important to be aware of what this present moment consists of and move accordingly. And you can't gather that information without being reflective and looking back.
100%. Last thing that I want to talk about, because I
Give it to me.
think in order to understand the way that we began, I think there's one thing that we need to talk about is that Matt, my husband
Yes.
and the lovely wedding that we had and the special love and connection that we share and that now our 2 or 3 families share, depending on how you look at it, was made possible because of Mark's passing. And I don't mean it in the literal way. What I mean is I fell in love with Matt and I recognized that he was a very special person because of the way that he related to me and he related to Mark and he related to my experience. I was able to see very quickly within the first 2 weeks of us dating, holy shit, like this person is so different because he had such a love and respect for Mark, even though you never met him. And even though for somebody, when you're first dating them, it's always scary. Like, is that going to be awkward for them? I got to, divulge, like I was married and he passed away. Like, how are they going to react? He reacted with nothing but love, respect, curiosity, emotion. He wanted to know what was Mark like? What was that like? How did I feel? Holy shit. What a beautiful person to be able to put all of his maybe weird things coming up for him. Okay, I like this girl. I'm considering dating her, but then there's this, like, it could have gone the completely opposite way. And he showed me nothing but the best of himself and nothing but the best of humanity in the way that he related to Mark's passing, and my experience of it. And that's when I knew. Like, I remember going to dinner with a girlfriend 2 weeks into dating somebody, and people always say this shit. And when I hear people say it, I'm like, bullshit. And she asked me, I know you do. Bullshit. No. She asked me, like, is this the one? And I'm like, well, in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, it's kind of a stupid question. What do you mean? How do you know after 2 weeks? And then I sat and I thought about it and I was like, I think it might be. I think it might be because he identified himself as a profoundly different and special human being in the way that he related to me and my loss and my story and to Mark and to Mark's family. And as the time went on, it was thing after thing that reinforced why he's special. I'm like, okay, I was right. Yeah, okay, I was right. He is really special. He does holidays with us. I think Mark's family loves Matt more than they love me. They're like, you could go away. He could stay. It's seeing the experience of seeing his mother and Mark's mother at our wedding in Italy, sitting next to each other, laughing, drinking rosé, having the best time ever and connecting like human beings and not getting hung up on something that might be a point of awkwardness or division and loving each other that much more. It was just the most beautiful thing in the world. Those are my favorite photos, the two of them together, laughing. Like, who would have thought?
I would have. It's what you deserve.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you knew all along.
Well, I don't. I mean, and people have to realize too. She still had to face rejection when it came to her and Matt getting to this marriage. They had a time where they had to really sort through their stuff and really step into their best selves as a team. It took work. It took work, and they were both willing to do it. They were both willing to do that work, step into who they were authentically, and say, "Hey, I did some thinking. This is who I am. Do you still want me?" Both of them.
Oh, and yeah. And we were in relationship for people who talk about time and timing. We were in a relationship. First of all, it took us 5 or 6 years of very distant Facebook friendship to even start dating. And then we were in a relationship for over 4 years before we got engaged. And we had to do a lot of soul searching and a lot of work to determine whether we were ready, not whether we loved each other, not whether, there was a want to commit to one another, but are we really ready to fully give ourselves to a marriage and to show up the way that we want as a partner? And there was a lot of difficult work. Again, we leaned on a relationship coach. I hate to keep going back to the coaching, but he helped. He helped. It wasn't like a key, he didn't show up and everything was fine, but in working with him, we got closer and closer.
He opened some doors for sure.
For sure, he opened ways of thinking.
Yeah,
exactly. And then we also had to step aside and have some separation full separation, no talking, no texting, full separation for a hefty period of time so that it felt real. And then we really did have the space to reflect and decide, what do I want? And then when we came back together, have that decision already made. Then when we came back together, express it to one another and see, do those decisions, those life paths align or not? And be okay with whatever the answer
Whatever it
might
was.
be.
I
And
mean,
that
'cause
shit was hard.
yeah, rejection. You're scared of it, especially when one person can come in and be like, I realize this is you. And the other person could very well have been like, I realized it wasn't you. You know? But
This is why I'm so addicted to watching these dating shows, you know,
100%,
like
100%,
where there's a
yeah,
choice point, there's a decision to be made, and both people have to make the
yep,
decision. What if one person says yes and
exactly.
the other person says no? I mean, it's human, right? Like whether it's in this manufactured environment where it's under a microscope and you get to play it out in real time in a very big sensationalized way, or it's every relationship has an element of that. And that is the
Absolutely.
scariest thing, especially if you've
You gotta face
experienced
it though. Like
rejection.
if you don't, because you could have been rejected if you when you took that time apart and came back together, and if you would have hid away and shied away from facing it head on and really being in that space, you would be where you are today. So that's
That's
amazing. And
I'm very, very
sending some extra
blessed.
love out to the Duff. I think I should have the Duff on this. I think he'd be an amazing voice to have on this. He's such an
I think he would
accomplished,
too.
incredible human being. So we're gonna
He
get that lined
he's
up.
he's a little bit of a cat with a bell too in his own right. I think we all are. He's an overachiever, and you know, it's interesting to kind of delve into what makes each person the way that they are.
Absolutely. Thank you for showing up and sharing you and being my bestest. I love you so much. That was a really great talk, and I hope that that hit the right ears to whoever was listening. And
Thank you, my friend. Thank you for holding the space. Thank you for creating a platform where these conversations can be had, because as you said, all it takes is just one person whose ears it hits the right way, makes it all worth it.
that's it. That's all. That's all I can hope for and all I want. So I love you.
Love you.
Bye bye for now. Until we talk in 4 seconds.
Toodles.
Hey, hey, you rejects out there. Go get rejected today. Go see what happens.
Oh my God.
Could change your life.
I love that. I want my reject hat. I want my reject t-shirt. Give me all the merch.
Coming soon.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, like, and share. But most importantly, go out there today and get rejected, you beautiful rejects. I am Gustavo Victor Carr, and this is Rejection and Reflection. Until next time.